Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20. Joining me for, I suppose, the condensed format of the new podcast as we transition into semi-off-season activities. We still have the Jersey Flegg and the NRLW alive, but NRL and New South Wales Cup wrapping up. So joining me to discuss all that and beyond are my good mates Sixties and Clint. Fellas, good to have you on board.
Well, look, it's good to be here, mate. Yes, we do have it condensed into the one podcast per week right now. Obviously, we'll play that by ear because if we get a team into the grand final with the Jersey Flegg, we'll look at giving them a dedicated preview podcast. But at the moment, this is a combination news and previews podcast, and looking forward to the absolute wealth of topics to talk about tonight.
Quint, how are you shaping up for this one, mate?
Coming off a very, very, I guess, mixed weekend in terms of not in terms of results because it was a clean sweep, which we'll get into, but it's certainly mixed sentiment and feelings towards those results. So yeah, it's a funny one. It's weird being in August and saying the NRL season is done for us, but not for other sides and not for our juniors, and we'll unpack that further as we get into this podcast.
And before any unpacking can be done, a quick shout out to the sponsors of the show, Big Swing Golf Northmead and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan and Parramatta, helping us get each of the 3 shows out every week, but now it's going to probably be down to just the one show a week. Alrighty. And on that note, with a bit of a pregnant pause there, let's get right into it.
News team, assemble!
Okay, fellas, there's a couple of things I do want to talk about before we get into some of the football. First of all, last Friday night, there was the ceremony that marked the amalgamation of Dural Country Club with Parramatta Leagues Club, and there was the official handover from the Dural Country Club chairman through to the Eels chairman, and it was certainly a well-attended event that was held up at Dural. It was quite a lot of people that were there, both Dural members and Parramatta Leagues Club members. A lot of positivity about the place. Seems to be a great reception by the locals for the Parramatta Leagues Club taking over the Dural Country Club venue, because they were in a little bit of dire straits in terms of what the COVID and the economy in general had inflicted upon the club, and they're able to continue functioning. I believe they'll probably be called the Dural Club or something like that. But as I said, it was a very positive evening, and a couple of legend players that were there. Muggo, John Muggleton, David Lydiard was there, and also Mark Laurie. And the other thing I want to mention is the Ken Thornett Medal is being held tonight. That's the Eels official presentation evening. Now, normally that is, well, in the past it's been something where you could buy a ticket to attend. These days it's invitation only. So unlike previous years, we can't bring you a live blog of the award winners as they happen. But what we'll do at the end of this podcast is we will bring you a list of the award winners for the night, including, of course, the big award for the medal itself. Okay, so moving on, fellas. The bit of news is that's coming out this week is that Jack Murchie, after just one season with the Parramatta Eels, has been released to take up a 3-year deal overseas. Your thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, it's a shame it didn't work, because on paper, Murchie had all the makings of a good fit for the Parramatta Eels. Had a relatively solid season with the Warriors last year. Had a bit of versatility, being able to play edge and middle, or at least in a lock forward role. But yeah, just it never really translated. I know he had a good preseason, but just couldn't find his feet on the actual field itself. And disappointing to see it not work, but glad that both parties were able to get a clean split and move apart their separate ways. Parramatta Eels now get another roster spot open. They're going to have to make that work. I don't think Mooch is on exactly a world of coin, but whether that means getting a young kid in or finding a good value signing elsewhere, I don't know. But yeah, a bit of roster flexibility now.
Yeah. What do you think, Clint?
Yeah, John and I have spoken about Jack a few times over the course of the season, and I can't help but echo his sentiments on this one. Jack was someone that we really, really wanted to see work. I think again, just going back to the conversations John and I had about him over the course of the season. We also felt that if he were to stay on, that he was someone that might benefit from another preseason, and that there was absolutely a player and a prototype to work there, but. Given his age, another season in reserve grade would damage his chances of securing a contract overseas. Likewise, he's at a point in his own development where, he wants to be playing regular senior football, and it makes sense if that opportunity isn't presenting itself in the NRL to try your hand in the Super League while you still qualify for a contract over there, given that you have to play a minimum number of NRL games over a course of 2 seasons. And likewise, as John just alluded to, it opens up the all too valuable roster spot, which in terms of balancing out our squad for 2024 and beyond is something quite valuable to our club at this point in time. So it'd be interesting to see how that spot is utilised. Obviously, we've spoken over the last couple of weeks about the need for outside backs. That's not new news to anyone listening, and any Eel supporter for that matter. But wish Jack all the best. It's a shame it didn't quite work out the way that we all wanted to. But he seemed like a good guy and a good team player, and I hope he kills it over in the Super League. I believe it's Huddersfield he's rumoured to be going to. So
the Giants.
Hopefully he does well for the Giants over there.
Okay, moving on, fellas. After last weekend, I did have a general question that I put out on social media, which was, who's your daddy? Because for the second time this season, the Eels had a clean sweep of the Panthers across all 3 grades. So that means that, the only 6 games to feature the Eels and the Panthers in senior football. All of the results went the Eels' way this year. Now, I do want to say at this point, I put that out on social media, obviously with a bit of tongue-in-cheek there, because any supporter in their right mind is going to take the having the first grade team in finals football well ahead of getting victories during the regular round. But somehow there were people who took that as being serious. And I mean, it never fails to amaze me the fact that there are people that couldn't see that, even with the way that the social media was worded, which even said the Panthers are likely to be in the box seat for getting a premiership three-peat, which is historical stuff. So even with that listed as the opener, anyway. So for now, we just got to take what we can get, and all that we got out of this season is the fact that the Panthers, who were defending premiers in actually not just the 3 senior grades, but also the SG Ball, were beaten this season by the Eels, although I think the SG Ball might have lost a regular round match to the Panthers, but the Eels SG Ball ended up winning the title. But yeah, if that's all we can get, that's all we can get this season. And there was a sense of joy about getting those victories. Although, of course, the last laugh is with the Panthers, who march onward towards maybe making some history this year. Still, you enjoy it this weekend, Clint?
Absolutely, and I dare say, maybe a post edit of this pod, we could get the Arnold Schwarzenegger soundbite in there from Kindergarten Cop of who's your daddy and what does he do. His name's the Parramatta Eels and he beats the Penrith Panthers. That's the answer. It was. It's always satisfying, but at the same time, equally frustrating from an NRL perspective on Thursday night last week, because you couldn't help but think. Obviously, we were playing without any pressure anymore, and the boys kind of let the ball sing, and passes were sticking, and there was an opportunity to try something different with the run on side and the rotations, and I thought all of that was managed quite well. And possibly a hint into some strategic play moving forward. But yeah, it's you always smile on a win regardless of the circumstances. It's just frustrating that when you consider our football over the last six to 8 weeks, that performance then came out against the team that is for the better part of 3 seasons now been the best in the competition, and haven't really looked like letting up since that point. So it kind of makes you wonder what if and what could have been. But nevertheless, as it stands for season 2023, it's probably the I guess silver lining on the season, that if Penrith were to go on and have the three-peat, we can say, yeah, but they didn't beat us.
John, a question for you.
Mhm.
Why do you think it is that the Eels have had more success against the Panthers, albeit in regular rounds, not finals football, but why have we had more success against the Panthers in these regular rounds than any other club?
Well, up until last round, I would have said that not the sole reason, but a very significant reason was Mitchell Moses and his ability to clear the ball and turn tilted field position battles into an even battle. But there was no Mitchell Moses on, well, I say the weekend, but on Thursday night. The Eels had to do without. And, yeah, I don't know. I think on a couple of factors, we've got the forward pack to really rumble with them. Penrith's pack obviously very good, but their back three also outstanding in terms of the yardage and the meterage. So our pack can definitely go toe-to-toe there. And we've talked about it in the past, boys, but the way we attack, we're probably the best team at transitioning between structured and unstructured football in the competition. Sometimes it can be to our detriment when we try and force offloads, but when we're getting the ball to sing, like Quint said so beautifully, we are very, very difficult to contain, and we saw that with Eels going in and out of structures, causing all sorts of problems for the Penrith edges. Gufferson and Brown really at home there, making the ball find its way to Sevo and whatnot. And I thought we also threw a couple of different looks at him in terms of our structured stuff. That first try, we had Guffer going into first receiver, playing out to Dylan Brown as the fullback, and he got to use his speed and then the ridiculous flick pass he got back to Sevo to create the, not the overlap, but the opportunity back on the inside there. So, yeah, Parramatta just, I think, that their ability to attack from different sort of angles, like compared to conventional offenses, and then, defensively when we're actually locked in, we're a pretty good team. And we hadn't seen that for a good portion of the season, but we saw it against Penrith.
Yeah, and just on that, Clint, when it comes to defence, I've had it suggested, seen it out there, that maybe we match up well and can contain Penrith reasonably well from a defence perspective, because the Panthers' outside backs aren't necessarily super fast, super flashy, which assists our defensive structures, because we may not necessarily possess ultra fast backs ourselves, and it's a little bit harder for the Panthers to get around the outside of the Eels without having any of that extreme pace existing in their outside backs. Do you think there's any validity in that from a defensive perspective?
I mean, it certainly helps and assists us, because when you consider the defensive line and the lateral movement of all our individual players in the defensive line, if you're not having to react half a second faster, or have someone moving that half a second faster as they come into you, of course it helps. Rugby league's a game of inches, to quote any given Sunday. It's I wouldn't say it's that's the single point of failure for Penrith in trying to beat us, but it certainly helps our cause that's the case. But I also don't think it should be underestimated that there's a a strong mental element to this, and that mental element, it's certainly not something that's plagued us for the past few seasons. It's kind of, and I won't necessarily say that it was a contributing factor to our season this season. Maybe even some of our later results towards the back month to 2 months of the season. But we've never had a problem, with the caveat of probably the last 6 to 8 weeks, getting up for big opposition. And I think that there's a sense of personal pride that probably exists within the club, and likewise, for a lot of these boys who went down to the Panthers in the grand final last year, you want to go out and make a point against a side like that. So the combination of us having no pressure and wanting to have finish the season on a high, and all of those other little elements, I think, are equally just as important. Obviously, getting back to your original question, yeah, look, there's some physical matchups that are sort of neutralized, and some that work in our favor in there, in the head-to-head there. But yeah, look, I don't think it's exclusively that. I think that's an element of it, with a couple of other things at play as well.
Okay, and just now looking back at the match itself, something that I did want to highlight, because it's since come out that he's heading for about 3 months of rehabilitation. But John, the courage and the I don't know, the general toughness of Clint Gutherson to battle through for a number of weeks his knee injury, and then to be on the field as long as he was last Friday
and
night,
dominate,
just to play such a dominating role in the game, and literally at the end when you saw him trying to knock his kneecap into place to continue on when he literally did only have one leg to run on, where he was hopping on one leg and attempting to stop a try. I mean, what more can you say about the captain?
Yeah, the only knock there ever has been on Clinton Gutherson in his capacity as a fullback is the speed. I mean, that is the only thing that has kept him from being considered the NRL's best fullback, in my opinion. His defensive work, his off-the-ball support play, his general IQ at fullback, he is at the top or close to the very top in each of those fields. It's just been a lack of elite pace that has held him back from being the best, and we saw every part of that against Penrith on the weekend. On Thursday. His ability to create, to be the bastion at the back, to lead the team around the park. Even the big verbal sparring he gave the match official about some of the calls they made. All of that. Well, in particular that call for the Sean Russell quote unquote knock on from trying to get the ball back in the field of play. But yeah, Guffer was just outstanding, and look, toughness is right at the top of his list. You don't get to be the fittest bloke at the club in the NRL or thereabouts if you're not tough. You got to push yourself to be that kind of elite in terms of fitness, and Guffo has had that in spades. And his effort on Thursday, did not surprise me, but I certainly admired it because, yeah, Captain Courageous by definition right there.
Well, actually, you've just corrected me then, because I think I said last Friday, and of course it was the Thursday night game. Clint, do you think, just quickly, do you think that Gutho has another year or more years as a fullback in front of him, or did we see a glimpse into the future with Dylan Brown running around at fullback?
Firstly, I just want to add to John's comments there, the ultimate competitor. There is no one who wants to win more, I think, than Clint Gutherson in the NRL. That's probably, I'm sure other supporters of other clubs would debate that. But, as far as we're concerned, Captain Courageous, the ultimate competitor, you can give him any accolade under the sun.
Clint, I just want to add in there, he just doesn't want to win in rugby league games. He wants to win everything at training. Like when they're doing pre-seasons and all the conditioning runs, all the drills, he wants to be a winner in those. And whenever the gauntlet is thrown, and he might get caught by surprise in a single run or something like that, and immediately you can see the look on his face like, you've you think you're going to beat me? You think, and it's like, bang, he just runs his opponents into the ground. I mean, he's almost like that undeniable force that when he sets his mind to it, he's not going to be denied. So, yeah, how he plays the game is no different to how he trains and prepares for a season, let alone for each match. So sorry for interrupting there, but
No,
so
no apology required at all. And to echo that sentiment and John's before you don't get to that level without being that way in training. It's not a happy accident. This isn't. We're not talking about attributes that that's natural talent. We're talking about a guy who continuously works on his craft and is competing to be the best in every little aspect of his game. So,
So how long's he got as a fullback?
I couldn't put a time on it, but to me, it's as long as he wants, and it's about the team that we have around him, because while we may have had a potential glimpse into the future with Dylan Brown filling in there at fullback when Gutho went off, we also conceded the majority of our points. And when Gutho went off, and that says a little bit about the leader that he is, the value of his talk at the back. Fullback is a very vocal role in rugby league. You need someone who's constantly talking to you, given that you control and direct the defensive line in front of you. Again, we're talking about some of Gutho's strong traits when we mention that. So, these are all things that need to be considered when we start discussing. Do we think there's a time limit on Gutho at fullback? When as we've just said before, the only knock on his game has been him not having that extra yard pace that you want, or you supposedly want a fullback to have. But geez, he does everything else bloody damn well.
Yeah, absolutely. But John, I just want to bring you in here on this, because there'd been a bit of talk around on social media and some fans suggesting they'd like to see Dylan Brown tried as a fullback. Given that that the club itself has spoken out and indicated that they wanted to recruit an X factor, primarily as a fullback, that might allow Gutho to move into another position, such as centre, there doesn't seem to be too much around. Is it possible that the Eels have created or can create their own from within, their own X factor fullback from within with Dylan Brown? Because I was on board with Clint in that communication is a huge part, and we saw the value of Gutho's communication, especially in defence. We see it in every game. We saw it maybe towards the end there when he wasn't there, and what the result was. Is there a future for Dylan Brown potentially as a fullback? Can he overcome what we perceive as being a communication shortfall and maybe just not being that natural talker out on the field for the Eels to manufacture an X factor at the back?
I mean, that's one of those. I think that's one of those ones that we as fans, even given how close we are to the Eels, given everything we do, but we don't know. Like, that is something that even at training, you probably need the coach's tape and their sort of their audio-visual feedback from that to understand whether he's talking enough in those sort of environments. Because you can talk at training, you can talk in scrimmages and whatnot, but talking on the field is what counts. And as fans, he was obviously talking on Thursday night against Penrith, but how vocal is he? Is he giving out the right signals? Is he doing everything he needs to do as a fullback? So I don't know. If he can get on top of that, then you do have a very intriguing idea there. If you can trust him to shepherd the defense and set everyone up in the right places and read the numbers from the fullback position in order to set up the defensive line, then I think you could absolutely flirt with the idea of putting him into fullback and then give him full reign of the team from that role. But it's a big if. And the other thing that comes with it is, where do you put Gufferson if you are moving Dylan? Does he go to 5'8"? Does he go to centre? If he goes to 5'8", then, fair enough, the team just works. If he goes to centre, then you've got to find someone to play 5'8".
Yeah, absolutely. maybe those answers are found in a couple of pathways players that are coming through.
True.
Who knows? I guess this is where the preseason may become intriguing to see.
If you're going to do that move, I think you bite the bullet and you do it right now. You can't delay if that's the case. If you think that you can't find the X Factor player at fullback externally, then you make the move with Dylan Brown now. He's got, in terms of the athleticism, he'd profile to be a top tier fullback. He's got the speed, he's got the engine. He can jump and catch. We've seen that from 5'8", that he can be very aggressive on his kick chases and get up and claim the ball. He's got plus playmaking as a fullback, given his history as a 5'8". And in terms of defense, well, that's probably the big negative from moving the fullback is, Guffer was obviously an outstanding defensive fullback in his own right, but you're going to lose the best defensive halfback or half in the competition. So that's also something worth considering in the mix. But if you think that the positives outweigh it, then you got to pull the trigger. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But yeah, if you think he's got the communication chops, and you think that he will make the transition elsewhere, then yeah, go for it.
Okay, now just talking through the other results from the weekend, we had an absolutely stunning final 20 minutes in the New South Wales Cup, where the Eels came from 24-4 down to record 30 unanswered points and run out 34-4 winners, 34-24 winners, and send Jordan Rankin out as a winner in his retirement match. Was certainly amazing to witness. It was an impossibility for me to blog, mate, at the
way the game played out, because I left on the stroke of half time. We had sim bidding, I believe, so it looked like the points were going to pile up, and
the second half started that way.
Yeah, and then in the final quarter of the game, I sort of look at my phone after getting back home, ready to head out again to the function I was going to, and I literally just said, "What the hell? Like, what's going on?" I had to call you to ratify that was indeed the correct result, given that we had a scoreboard error in the Jersey Flegg causing some drama.
We'll get to that in a minute.
What a tremendous rallying effort from the boys. And look, they missed the finals, but by winning they knocked Penrith out. And in terms of their finish to the season, they had a monster slump in the midpoint of the season. There is no way to spin that as anything else. But they finished the year with 4 wins from the last 5 games. So they played some really positive football. The injection of young guys helped massively bringing energy into the team. We saw a rotating cast of, I want to say, about somewhere between 8 to 10 Flegg players being part of the team at various points in that run. And it felt like it really invigorated them. And on top of that, looking at this result, you could tell the team did not want Rankin to go out a loser. They rallied big time. They had no reason to fight that hard otherwise in a game where they're not playing for the finals. Yeah, you're being spoilers for Penrith, who are a rival. That's cool. But they dug really deep, and well done to them.
Yeah, I have to say, it was almost comical for me to try to blog that, because for just to give context to those comments, I was blogging on my phone with one thumb typing.
Yeah, and you had tries popping off every 4 or 5 minute intervals, or even faster in the last 3.
No, it was actually faster than that. Basically,
4 tries in 11 minutes or something.
Yeah. Basically what was happening was that a try was being scored, and obviously I can't touch type like you. I have to watch what's happening, and then I choose my moment about what to describe. Now, in that final 20 minutes, I could only describe the try-scoring passages. So I was watching a try-scoring passage. Then immediately, while the kick was being lined up and taken, I started my description of what had transpired in the try-scoring movement. And then I was still typing as the play from the kickoff was heading straight back downfield, and a try was almost being scored immediately in that same set of 6 from the kickoff, either from that or from a repeat possession in that sequence. So as I'm then watching the next try being scored and trying to commit that to memory, I'm then finishing off typing up the previous try scoring movement, and then launching straight into the next one. I was always a full description behind of what was transpiring out on the field. They literally made it impossible to keep up. So but what a great moment for Jordan Rankin. Clint, I guess now the focus for Jordan switches to his role as a coach within the club.
The club made official yesterday, perhaps, I think, or certainly at the conclusion of that New South Wales Cup game, that Jordan will be the Jersey Flegg coach for 2024. Obviously, as we've just alluded to, in the way the boys rallied for him in his final Cup game, a much loved figure around the club, and this is something that he's been, I guess the word is groomed for over the past couple of seasons. We'll remember when in 2021 when the competition went into lockdown and the game and it was moved into the competition was relocated to Queensland. Jordan Rankin wasn't one of the players who went up with the squad, and that's because the plan that we've now see come to fruition had started. And those discussions had been happening at that point, and it was about Jordan helping the next wave of players coming through in terms of his involvement as a player. Likewise, he's been the assistant coach of the grand final winning SG Ball side this year, and doing plenty of work in our development and pathways. It's not just that role that he's been doing, and now he gets a shot as Flegg coach in 2024.
Yeah, and I should mention as well that we've had all of the coaches named for the junior representative teams over yesterday. I believe that those announcements were made, and let me just double check those that list of announcements, because it was there's a few changes that have taken place.
Each of the junior rep teams have changed coaches on top of the Jersey Flegg as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so we've now got the following. So we've got in Jersey Flegg, of course, that's Jordan Rankin, and we want to really send out a shout out to the current Jersey Flegg coach Craig Brennan for not just this year but many years of coaching within the Eels pathways, junior reps up to, well, even last year he was assisting Jordan Rankin with the reserve grade team when Jordan was made captain coach, and obviously during the year he was the assistant coach to the Germ at Jersey Flegg level last year, and he was then also made match day assistant for Jordan Rankin, so he was up there in the box for Jordan Rankin being out there on the field with that. Craig's a great man. He's a Parramatta man. There's still unfinished business this season for him, and he's done a terrific job moulding together almost two distinct teams. The Jersey Flegg team that started the year this year, and the SG Ball, who, a massive number of them, must have been around about a dozen, that have taken the field at different points during the second half of the season. And to be able to mould them into such a harmonious group who are playing great football as a unit has been remarkable. The head coach of the SG Ball will be Mitchell Lewis, and Mitchell, I believe, has worked with the Bulldogs in the past, and he's also one of the football coaches up at the Hills Sports High School. And the Harold Matthews head coach is Charbel Khoury, who was the assistant coach in Harold Matthews this year. I should mention as well that Steve O'Day, who was the head coach of the SG Ball, has moved up to be assistant coach in the Jersey Flegg, and Chris Howard, who was the coach of the Harold Matthews this year, did not apply for coaching positions for next year, and he's he's has coaching work that he does at Wenty, and I believe his son is in that sort of 16 years age group at the moment, and he's heavily involved with that as well. So, and again, our thanks to Chris, who won't be coaching at the Eels next year, but again, in his roles as an assistant coach, as a head coach within the Pathways, he's done so much for these young players, and really been a guiding light, just as Craig Brennan has, and it's also good to see that as a premiership winning coach as well, that Steve O'Dea has been kept within the Eels system, and also I suppose too that Charbel Khoury has been able to step up that role from being assistant coach to a head coach. And in the Tarsha Gale, we had Ryan Walker, who's, I believe, has another role, a more senior role within the Pathways at the Eels, which means that Shah Henry has been offered the role of head coach this year. So for next year, sorry. So she's moving up from assistant coach of the Tarsha Gale to the head coach of the Tarsha Gale. So what we're seeing there is a little bit of progression within those junior rep appointments for next year. So just wanted to make mention of those fellas, and also now just moving forward on that match for the Jersey Flegg. What a match to watch. And then also the aftermath of it, with waiting for that final result. John, I've done enough talking just then. Talk our listeners through the scenes out at Penrith for the conclusion of the match. And just quickly before you do, I should also point out, I actually had Jordan Rankin as one of the best on field for the Eels in his final match. So a real shout out to Jordan Rankin, not just on his winning his retirement game, but also his individual performance in the game, which was outstanding. So, yeah, John, talk us through those closing stages of the Jersey Flegg match.
Yeah, well, what a roller coaster of emotion, because they came into that match needing to beat Penrith and have Canberra upset the Melbourne Storm. And heading into half-time in both games, the Eels were down by 2, playing a bit of not their best football. They weren't terrible.
Nervous. It was nervous football.
Yeah. And
absolutely nervous.
Meanwhile, Canberra were absolutely crushing it. They were up 16-0. So it looked like the Eels were going to, have their end of the bargain being let down by themselves, with Canberra doing the job down in Melbourne. Fast forward into the second half, the Eels come out and they're just a completely different team in the second half. Breno obviously hit the right notes in the halftime speech. The players responded magnificently, ran Penrith off the park. But as we were doing that, at the same time, we saw the scoreboard going the wrong way in the NSWRL app, with the Storm going 1 try, then 2, and then 3 to make it 16-all. And the worst part was that a draw was as bad as a loss or a Melbourne win or a Canberra loss, whichever way you want to put it, for the Eels, because a draw would split them by 1 point. So either way, it was looking terrible. And then we got what looked to be the death knell with after a long, pregnant sort of pause on the updating, where it felt like the game had to have been over without any updates, thus being a draw. We see the Melbourne Storm scoring a try in the 68th minute. We've just gone, no, not like this. Not after they've done so well to turn the season around and Storm home winning, what was it, like 6 or 7 of our last 8 games, beating, other premiership contenders in that window. But no, it was a scorer's error. They'd pressed the button for the wrong team, and it was the Raiders who'd scored in the 68th minute. So absolutely, like you said, 60s, a roller coaster of insanity, really, with the boys playing wonderful football to bring it home, and then the Raiders doing their end, or holding up their end of the bargain. And yeah, they enter the finals not with a whisper but a roar. They're going to meet Penrith again, and the way they've played, last couple of times they've met, plus the last 2 months of football in general, they've got a real chance here. Yeah,
they certainly do. And that match is at North Sydney Oval on Saturday morning, kick-off 11 o'clock. It's a bit crazy to think that a match between Parramatta and Penrith, a finals match, is being staged at North Sydney on a Saturday morning. But that's how it goes. I guess they locked in the venues some time ago, because I think the other venue Cogra, and it's a little bit friendlier, I think, because it might be the Sharks and I think from memory, the Set might be South. Anyway, it's certainly far more local clubs that are playing down there at Cogra. It's a disappointment that they couldn't have something like St Mary's or something organised as a venue for the Eels and Penrith. I think even Eels supporters would have been content for it to be played out in Penrith's backyard, because I don't think the Eels have any fear about where the game is staged in that regard. Clint, I don't know if you got to see that final try that was scored by the Raiders that got the Eels into the finals.
I haven't seen it yet. However, I did have the frantic refresh experience that John detailed. That was absolutely my experience, both from a reserve grade and a New South Wales Cup and a Jersey Flegg perspective, because my wife had booked very kindly, very thoughtfully, booked us in to see a film on Saturday that was stationed between the first half of Flegg and the end of the second half of Cup. So yeah, you know, I was doing the cheekies in the cinema, just seeing sort of what was happening, keeping my eye on it, till I got to a point where, you know, not too dissimilar to John, but the Cup, that I went, oh well, okay, that looks like it's done. And then likewise, it wasn't until I'd come out of the film that I actually saw that the adjustment had been made for Flegg, and Dad simultaneously, as I saw that, texted me saying that that Flegg got through. So definitely had the breadth of experience of emotions on that one, and as I'm sure many of the Eels faithful following those ones did too.
Yeah, it was, just to let listeners know, if you haven't had a look at any highlights on New South Wales Rugby League, I had that particular try sent through to me by someone on Saturday night, and it emphasised the, I guess, a bit of fortune that fell the Eels' way with that, because the Raiders, and this is with just over a minute to go, so they're attacking the Storm line. They set up for the field goal. The Storm are up too quick for them to go for the field goal, so the ball swings right, and they grubber a kick into the in goal, and it literally was grounded maybe about like centimetres inside the corner of the in goal. So it could have rolled too far, both in terms of depth and width, but it was literally inch perfect for them to score that try, and really we have to be thankful to that, because that match was not going to get them into the finals, the Raiders. They could have played out a draw quite easily, but they were going for the win over the Storm, playing with a great determination to win, and the Eels were the beneficiary of that. And talk about playing with a lot of conviction, a lot of determination to win. John, what about the NRLW victory?
I mean, we've spoken about them for nearly a month now, Sixties. I mean, I think round 3 against Newcastle, and then you had the Broncos and the Raiders after that. And it felt like they've been building, and it wasn't just lip service. They've been improving week on week. It's not a coincidence that Rachael Pearson has been back since that game against Brisbane and made a difference for the team there. But this is a win that they have built for a month, and they deserved it handsomely. And they played some very good football. From the same contributors that have been outstanding since day one this season, I think stood tall again. But they had more support this week, more young guns stepping up, more of the experienced recruits stepping up, and yeah, they fought very hard for this win. And while the Cowboys gave them a little bit of and also said, I don't know if they've got another name for them, but calling the Cowboys what their official name is very odd for a ladies team. But the Cowboys gave them.
Sorry, what is it? What is it?
I don't know if they've got an official name for the Cowboys outside the Cowboys.
Yeah, it doesn't. it doesn't sound right to call them the Cowboys, does it?
Yeah.
I mean, are they calling them the Cowgirls? I mean, you'd think they have to be.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be another name they'd be using, but they're like, in terms of all their official insignia, they're the Cowboys. You go to NRL.com and it's listed as the Cowboys. In terms of that little scare they gave them, like, yeah, that was a little bit of a raise on the heart rate per minute there, but I thought they played very well. I thought Rachael Pearson really owns this team now. We saw her golden boot on show here. I mean, the usual suspects in terms of strong performers stood tall again. Cassie Toihiku, the Eels need her locked up yesterday. She is legitimately a breakout superstar in this competition now. She is the full package in attack and defense. She kicked it 65 metres off a dropout. Like, I know it bounced, but it went nearly 50 on the fly and got 65 metres on the roll. So she is absolutely killing it. But, all the young core, Church, Faye, obviously Pearson isn't part of the young core, but she's a huge part of the team in general. But Ruben Cherrington, outstanding again. Tyler Amiatu, brilliant. She's brought an offload into a game after dominating with the ball in hand. Both her and Ruben, by the way, Amiatu was a tick over and Ruben was a tick under 14 metres a run. And that was with good numbers too. They were both over 100, 140 for Amiatu and a tick over 100 for Ruben. Mahalia Murphy was excellent. Jade Venor, I thought, was very good coming back from her broken hand. And then on the interchange, we got to see, well, not just the interchange. In the team, we got two more rookies. The boss, Noaria Kapua, who they call the boss. So it's a pretty sweet name, I got to say. And then she comes to us by way of the Bulldogs from their Tasha Gale pathways. Only signed to the end of the year, so that's another decision they need to, be pretty quick about what they're going to do there. And then,
the Bulldogs won't have an NRLW.
I know, but there's plenty of other competition, as we've seen how we got pillaged coming into this year. And then the other one too, internally, we've spoken glowingly about Sam Tuivasa and he's eligible for another year SG ball. Lindsay Tui can return for Tasha Gale next year, and she's out here making her NRLW debut and had a very good game, I thought.
Yeah, and it was a game that I thought she really built into. Like, the longer the game went, the more she found her feet.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of nervous moments early. Certainly wasn't given some of the best service early in the game. But yeah, I really thought that she made her presence felt, like physically made her presence felt out there. And she has a long career in front of her. Again, another one that needs to be locked up. But mate, yeah, there's certainly plenty to like about the way that they achieved their victory. Clint, you'd have to be on board with locking up these players like Amiatu and Toihiku. Toihiku, how old is she, John? Is she?
Ham and I were talking about her on the Para podcast earlier tonight, and I believe she's turning 20 this year. So yeah. She's just out of Tasha Gale. She literally has her whole career ahead of her. She's shown that she can play wing and centre with equal aplomb. We've already pushed for her to be maybe considered as a fullback option, given how influential she can be for the team with more ball in her hand. But yeah, she's turning 20. I think Amiatu might be 21. Where is she? She's a date of birth that doesn't show up on her profile. But when I checked last time, I thought she was in her very early 20s. So they've got some seriously good young talent in their team right now. And with the advent of multi-year contracts now in the NRLW, they are your core. Sign them up.
There is no excuse for not locking in players like that.
Yeah,
there is none. It doesn't fly now that you can only lock in, a one player to a multi-year deal. This is the time to act, not later. Now, no, you got
them, Ruben Cherrington, those players alongside your, long-term signings in Albert, Kennedy Cherrington, and Pearson. Zali Faye's another young one too to throw onto that pile of players to retain. But they are how you build towards an NRLW premiership, because you have them. You can start augmenting with your own Tasha Gale, with the Tasha Gale squads from other teams that aren't necessarily in the NRLW, as we saw with Boss Kapua. There are players out there to go recruit, but you need those girls locked up now. You cannot.
Sorry, John.
So you go.
No, I was just gonna ask who Clint would put as his priority out of all of those. If you could only sign one right now,
Oof.
and I mean that, and I mean this is completely hypothetical because they should be signing all of them, right? But
Yep.
who would be the first that you'd sign right now to a long-term deal?
Well, given her age, you got to go CTH, Kasitoe Hiku, but followed very closely by Tyler Aniatu. I think she's been absolutely devastating, and for a forward pack that's been missing down on troops this year, her introduction to the NRLW has coincided with the team's improvement in form, and then subsequently leading to a win. So, the old saying that is that in rugby league that forwards win matches back decided by how much also kind of rings true, but it seems like we've got a really, really good one on our hands in Kasitoe Hiku, and given that the quality of and it must be said she's played plenty of fullback in other teams and in junior sides that she's been a part of, Cassie. So
she was the fullback for the City team
something
this year, I think.
Yeah,
and she did not
yeah,
she didn't look out of
right.
position. So I mean, and again, we've spoken about this in the past. That is not a slight on Abby Church, who's been very good this season.
No.
I think Abby can still be a huge part of the back line at wing or centre. It's just that Cassie, she has every tool required to be one of the best players, not just a superstar, but one of the best players in the NRLW, it feels like. She has the aggression, the hunger, the speed, the athleticism. I mean, in the one game, we saw her make 150 metres, kick a ball 65 metres from a set restart from a dropout, do a prime Gidley flick pass to Kimberly Hunt down a right edge short side, and also reap the soul of Francesca Goldthorpe in defence. She is the full package. She is outstanding.
I love that phrase, reap the soul. But now that we've just run through these players and we've just been talking about the Flegg and the NRLW, 40, can you take us through the main talking points of Team List Tuesday, which only features the Flegg and the NRLW team?
It is very much an abbreviated TLT, no Cup, no NRL, but the Eels meet the Panthers for the second week running in the Jersey Flegg. This one's taking place 11 o'clock a.m. out at North Sydney Oval. It will be on New South Wales Rugby League TV, so you can catch that on their Facebook stream. But for the Eels here, Sixties, I do not envy Brenner. It was always going to be a tough task this week to build his team, and the players that are missing out, and the players that are unavailable because of either suspension or not being eligible for Jersey Flegg finals contention, probably saved him a few headaches too. Because no Arthur Miller-Stephen, he's not eligible. He only played, I think, 2 games of Flegg this year and was either injured or playing New South Wales Cup. No Tony Mattielli, who we believe is suspended. But coming back into the team this week, the captain, Jock Brazel.
And also Tony Mattielli wouldn't have been eligible even if he was
which has my head scratched because he is out of eligibility, but Jonte Jr. Beffin-Meza, who was a massive in, but I don't know how he is Flegg eligible. So evidently he's just made the cutoff, but that is a huge in for the team. Jonte's been a mainstay in senior football and now comes back into this team. So while they would have lost Tony for nearly the full final series, I think 60s due to suspension, he might have been back for the grand final, I think.
No.
Because the Eels would have had to have played 3 games to make the grand final. No, 2 games.
2.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so I don't think he would have played a game.
Yeah, so I
believe it's a 3 games suspension there.
A huge in for the Eels there, and also Richard Penasini, who returns from a concussion sustained in his New South Wales Cup debut. So out also was Saxon Pryke, who again don't know if injury or suspension is a factor there, but if it isn't, then that just reflects on how loaded the team is. But quickly, Arpa Tweedle at fullback, you got Matty Komalafi, Ethan Martin on the flanks, Samuel Loizu on the left centre or in the left centre position with Richard on the right, Lynn and Sanders in the halves, Brock Parker, who was outstanding against Penrith, he'll be one of the bookends with Jonte the other, Matty Arthur at dummy half, Brazel captaining on the left edge, Tupou on the right, Nick Lenars, who I believe has picked up the Player of the Year in the Jersey Flegg. Yes, and Brock got the Coaches Award, by the way. And then there in the front row, or in the round at the pack, sorry. Blaze Talangi moves from centre to the back line or general utility, given they can probably play back row. Sam Tuivasa, Will Latu, and Noah Reid on the interchange, which means that there is no injury or suspension at play, keeping Charlie Geimer out of the team, boys. Like that is a serious like embarrassment of riches there to have a player like Charlie, who was playing Cup not 2 weeks ago and doing a good job, missing out here. But obviously, again, in no way reflection or indictment on Charlie, but Breno's trying to balance, the best players available, team chemistry. There's been established combinations in that team throughout the course of the season. And who knows? There's still plenty of time before Saturday. Every chance that there could be a tweak to the team. But
well, I guess it's possible, but like you say, it is a mark of the players that are available because Charlie in the back end of the season was because he was part of the New South Wales Cup. He and a number of other players were also training against the NRL team in certainly in the second training session each week to as part of the opposed work and part of the skills work with the club. So almost similar to what we saw a number of years back when Dylan Brown and all of his cohorts started training with the Eels in the latter part of that season, the 2018 season leading into 2019. Sorry for interrupting there, mate. But so that's, as you said, it's an embarrassment of riches for Breno there, and some players, even players being moved, because we saw Will Latu move from centre to the bench.
Yeah,
and
well, he's shown his versatility throughout the course of the season, capable of playing both back row and centre. And he's been a big factor for them throughout the course of the entire season. So no surprises to see him still win a spot in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the NRLW team, you would expect there's not going to be too many changes to a winning line.
No, yeah, you don't tinker too much with a winning formula, especially when you've been building the way they have. But they are taking on the table-topping Sydney Roosters, and there is, I think, one change, if my maths is right, and that comes on the interchange of Capri Paycow coming back into the equation. So not sure why she missed out last week, but they couldn't fit her onto the bench last week, whether it was injury or suspension or a straight-up, just team composition decision. But coming against the Roosters, she comes onto the interchange where she joins Boss Kapua, Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis, and Maddie Jones. Backline is unchanged. Church Fay, Tui, Toi Hiku, and Hunt. So Tui gets her first official start in terms of the team was Tuesday, or she started last week, but gets the 3 on her back this week instead of one of the reserve jerseys. And in terms of starting pack, no changes there. O'Neill, Cherrington of the Reuben variety, Amiatu, Murphy, and Jade Fanua. So Davis Welsh is the one that drops off the interchange there to make way for Paycow. And we'll preview him properly in a sec, but looking at that Roosters lineup, it is an absolute galaxy of stars, boys. Baxter, Surgis, Kelly, Aiken, Kelleher, Boyle, Davis, Hilmawana, Kernick, Joseph. Like, oh my goodness. Like that is almost like a representative starting team right there.
It is. The Eels got the job done in 2022, most unexpectedly against the Roosters. Who knows? Anything's possible.
Samaima and Kennedy were absolutely amazing in that game. I thought Kennedy was actually the best player on the field. This team, though, if they can minimise the errors and, giving away the position and the opportunities to attack their goal line, on which they've been very, committed to their goal line defence by the same token, but minimise the errors against this Roosters team, and I think you'll create some opportunities. Not because the Roosters are weak defensively, I just think Parramatta have the strike now. I think in the forward pack, Amiatu is that much of a difference maker. The fact that she's finding her offload now and freeing up someone like Ruben Cherrington to terrorise defences in behind the rock is huge. Jade Fanua is getting back another game under her belt, and I think she's a pretty handy lock forward from what we've seen. Mahalia Murphy is carving in big inroads down that left edge. So the forwards are starting to get traction, through the middle and beyond. And then obviously in the back line, Tai Hiku, Church, Fay, Tui. I mean, Kimberly Hunt, we didn't talk about her in the post-match sort of analysis we just did, boys, but she had a terrible start against Canberra. They really picked on her with the high ball, but she rallied beautifully and end up scoring 2 tries from the boot. So
from Parramatta's attacking kicks.
So well done to her there. But the Eels they do have the ability to ask questions of this outstanding Roosters lineup.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fellas, that has been an extensive Eels news that we've just gone through, and we have NRLW news that we need to power through, and then we've got a couple of previews that we're going to quickly look at. So whilst we're talking here, thank you to everyone that's tuning in and listening. I don't know whether at this point in time people want to go out and grab a coffee or something like that. Just put the podcast on pause while they go out and do that.
Intermission time.
There is plenty more to come. I could get the old theatre organ out and start playing away like it used to happen back in intermissions in the cinemas, and people go out and can get their Jaffas and popcorn and choc top ice creams and what have you.
Let's all go to the lobby.
So anyway, let's power on, because there is plenty that we do need to get through. Welcome back anyone that did just take a little bit of a pause and come back for the second half. We do have some key matches and finals permutations, and we're going to talk about some of the main news that's coming out. But I just wanted to get your takes on what's going to happen, because this weekend the clubs that are in trouble for the finals that are currently in the top 8 are obviously the Raiders and the Rabbitohs, and the clubs looking to get into the top 8 being the Cowboys and the Roosters. Now, the Roosters' fate is in their own hands, because if they beat the Rabbitohs, they're automatically in. They jump ahead, and they'll jump ahead of the Raiders as well if the Raiders lose. The other permutation, of course, is the Cowboys, who they're taking on the Panthers. And it's interesting because as a result of their loss last week, and I wondered whether this would be the case, the Panthers have basically named pretty much as strong a lineup as they could. Do you think that's a case of Cleary not wanting to go into finals football on the back of 2 straight losses?
I'm a bit surprised they did that. I would have thought, given the formula for success they've had in the last couple of seasons, they would have valued that essential bye for the top team, the week off, more highly than the minor premiership. But evidently they felt that maybe Parramatta exposed some stuff that they need to dust up and put the elbow grease into before the finals. Otherwise, I don't see why they would name their full-strength team otherwise.
I reckon if the Eels, if they had beaten Parramatta last week, you would have seen them rest players this week. And, of course, this is probably much to the Cowboys' disappointment that they see a full-strength Panthers lineup facing them this week as they battle to get into the finals, because who knows, they might have half budgeted on having a win over a Panthers reserve grade team in the final match of the year.
Yep.
Clint, your takes on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% for that reason. It's not a big sum of money in the grand scheme of things, the $200,000 prize for winning the minor premiership, but it is good bragging rights, and it is also a good confidence boost for a side to know that they've maintained a level of consistency over the course of the season to win a minor premiership. So, Penrith, more so for the reasons that you've already stated and wanting to, work on some of those things that our boys might have exposed. But, to play for the minor premiership is no small feat either. And it'd be another feather in the cap of this very successful Penrith side. So, I think there's a small element of that at play, and a small element of their own personal pride that they want to go out there and secure the JJ Gilton Shield.
Yeah, and we've got the Raiders taking on the Sharks. The Sharks, they probably can't be dislodged from 6th place because of that for and against that they've got, not unless the Rabbitohs were to secure a huge win over the Roosters, and then the Sharks lose to the Raiders. But I don't know about you fellas, but the way I see it panning out this week, is that the Roosters beat the Rabbitohs, leapfrog them into 8th place. The Cowboys lose to the Panthers, so they stay in like a 9th or 10th place. Doesn't really matter who wins between the Sharks and the Raiders. Then I think probably the Sharks get the job done, and you have the top 7 pretty much staying the same, and the Roosters jumping in ahead of the Rabbitohs. Either of you see it playing out any differently?
I think that's the most logical sequencing of what we're going to see in the coming week. We all know that sport and rugby league in particular love to throw a curveball or two, which obviously is it's a baseball reference, but let's go with the odd bounce of the oblong footy going a weird direction. So there's still stuff that could change, I suppose, but I feel like for the most part the final structure is settled. I suppose the question is, in terms of the finals, how much noise can teams like the Warriors and the Newcastle Knights make?
Yeah, absolutely. Clint, do you see those results going any differently? I mean, is it possible that the Rabbitohs beat the Roosters?
Oh, look, you never say never. It's a battle that on paper, even with the absence of Latrell Mitchell, that the Rabbitohs should have a level and degree of confidence in. Never underestimate the local rivalry there. There's always a show that's put on between those two. So, it's certainly not outside the realms of possibility, but it's hard to think how and to see how they break out of the funk they found themselves in for the second half of this season versus the Roosters last month or so, where they've been able to bank some wins and get a little bit of consistency that had previously evaded them.
Perhaps it might come down to whether Joey Manu is fit to play as well. And just to that end, just from the team lists, we've got the Storm and the Broncos basically naming reserve grade teams with respect to some of the players that are out there, because we have the likes of Ryan Papenhuyzen, who's making his starting debut for the season for the Storm, but they've really named a lineups that, if the match mattered, would be completely different to who would be out there. The Knights and the Warriors have rested key players. I mentioned before the Panthers have named full-strength teams. Some of the key injuries that could affect finals football, and not so much this week, but moving past this week, you've got Jerome Luai with his dislocated shoulder. You've got Nanai from the Cowboys, who also has a shoulder injury. Metcalf over at the Warriors, who looks like he's probably out for the rest of the season at this stage with his hamstring. Papali'i definitely out for the season with a bicep injury. Joey Manu named, but that, geez, how does one come back within a week with a hamstring injury? And then, of course, you've got Jared Warrior-Hargraves and Corey Horsburgh, who are suspended. Jared was already suspended for the headbutt for 3 weeks. He was fighting the other high tackle charge, but he was already out for 3 weeks with the headbutt. And Horsburgh, a lot of pundits were thinking he'd be found not guilty and that he'd win at the judiciary tonight. He didn't. And he's now got a 4-week suspension, so that's the end of his season.
I think about for Ricky to swear about, eh?
Yeah. So they're the key ones going forward. But just as a sidelight, the next thing I really wanted to talk about was Ricky Stewart and his outburst at the cameraman that was captured last week on live television, that expletive. And the cameraman did come out and say he's actually quite happy it was caught on live TV because he does it all the time. So has Ricky been sanctioned by the NRL? There was some talk about that.
I haven't seen anything in relation to it, but I'd hope that it's a strong consideration because, you have a duty as part of the NRL itself as a coach to conduct yourself in a certain way. And I understand that coaching is a stressful, occupation, and especially in the NRL where it's a very results-driven business. But Ricky has tenure essentially in Canberra, right? Like he is as untouchable a coach is, regardless of results, as you're going to get. And yeah, the carry-on's just not good for the game. Like some people will love the drama. I don't mind sports drama, but there is a difference between that and blatantly telling the cameraman to go stuff himself in really strong terms on national TV when he wasn't doing anything wrong. And Ricky is a master of deflection. This is part of his coach book, and every press conference you watch him, and the cry about how unfair the Raiders have been treated in the presser was an all-timer. But what didn't surprise me was the fact that within less than 24 hours, the Ricky Stewart Defence Force had mobilised in the media, and Crawley was out there saying how fans shouldn't be blaming the coach for his outburst, should be blaming the media or whatever it was. I can't remember how he phrased it, but it was pretty asinine. No, conduct yourself better. That's not good enough. And if the NRL haven't sanctioned him, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah, Clint, in this instance, it's not like he's been followed in his private life by paparazzi. He's moved to the sideline and is captured moving to the sideline by the cameras, as they would any coach, and do cover with any coach moving to the sideline. They get a grab of them either moving there or sitting there watching the game. This is nothing unusual. I can't think of another instance where we've had the coach tell the camera operator to F off during a live broadcast. We in his time we would see Jeff Tuvey get upset with supporters around in the coach's box. But I mean, like Ricky's never been held to account, and John just pointed out, people love the drama around Ricky. If the Canberra Raiders have had a controversial loss, everyone's tuned in to the presser to see exactly what Ricky has to say. But in the past, the claims are there that he's said this before to camera operators. We've seen him. I remember seeing him one week where he just either kicked or threw a chair that was on the sideline. It nearly went over the fence and hit the spectators that were seated at the fence. I mean, there just is consideration for people that are around. He just really lets the emotions take control. And as John said, while it might be good theatre, it's not really responsible behaviour or what you should have from a leader of a club. What's your take? Do you enjoy the theatre? Do you enjoy the drama, or has he overstepped the mark?
Look, it's a hard question to answer without being a little bit of a fence sitter, because the game does need characters, and people probably find it a little bit funny that I lead with this, and it's because I want to finish on my other point. The game needs characters, and Ricky Stewart is certainly one of those. And but there comes a point, like a lot of things in life, where it becomes the law of diminishing returns, and you can't help but see something like this and think, okay, the line's now being crossed. What are we actually going to do about this? Because the behavior you walk past is the behavior you accept. Ricky is as a professional enough rugby league identity that I'm sure he sat and thought on his behavior. Whether he shares that with other people or not, he would have sat and thought on his behavior and gone, you know what, probably not my best moment. Regardless of the cameraman being my phase in a tense moment of the game and of our season, probably not my best moment to have done that on national TV. So you'd like to think that there is a sense of personal accountability for his involvement and what he contributed to the circumstances that led to this coming to light. And in which case he is the aggressor in this situation. I do find it interesting that Fox Sports apologized to Ricky themselves for getting in his face about that. But look, I guess you could make a case for them doing that. But at the same time, it's a televised national sport, and it's at the highest level. There's cameras everywhere. It's the broadcast deals that make the game possible. in many ways. So, what comes with that, and as a byproduct of that, is both written and underwritten understandings that there is an expectation, a code of conduct, expectation of behaviour, and abusing people who, for all intents and purposes, are doing their jobs is crossing the line. So
what happens, Clint? What happens going forward if Fox Sports have issued an apology? Does that mean that the instruction to their camera operators is treat Ricky with kid gloves? Don't go filming him if he comes to the sideline. I mean, is that literally what will happen?
Well, what reading between the lines, the Fox Sports in this instance and in apologising have been advocates for Ricky Stewart, the coach, and not their employee trying to do his job. And from an HR perspective, you've got to be looking out of the welfare of your employees. So what I would like to see is, yes, a punishment, and a standard of behaviour upheld. So that line is clearly established, because who's to say that another coach is to do that and that there is not a different expectation put on that coach? It's the same rules for everyone, and regardless of it being an emotional point in time in the game, an emotional point in time in Canberra's season, there's certain things that just shouldn't be allowed, and that to me, it falls into that category for me.
I reckon if there were certain coaches that did this, that looked right down the lens of the camera and said F off, basically to everyone. I know it's aimed at the cameraman, but that message is going to everyone in their lounge rooms that's watching this. There'd be plenty of coaches who I believe their own clubs would sanction them for such behaviour, and the media would crucify them. And this isn't a pile-on Ricky Stewart. This is just,
it's about the standard of behaviour.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be tolerated for a whole lot of coaches. And there are so many coaches, they might think it in their head, but they also understand their obligation to the game, their obligation to the club, their obligation as leaders, and also even role models as coaches. So it's just, how they can't go out. A coach can't then go out to coach the coaches programs, if they might be involved in those, and talk about how coaches should conduct themselves on the sideline, right? And talk about acceptable behaviour. In fact, their club couldn't go out and talk about acceptable behaviour and demand it from junior clubs if their own coach behaves like this straight into the cameras on national television. Like, that's a basic. And so if he's not held to account, it says a bit about his club, and it says quite a bit about the NRL as well. Now, just moving on, this week we're also seeing a first from the officiating ranks, because Belinda Sharp and Casey Badger are to become the first female referees ever to control NRL games under the one referee system. It's although those games that they're controlling, they don't have any impact on finals football. But I tell you what, it's a historical moment, isn't it, for the female referees to be fully in charge of an NRL fixture?
Yeah, I mean, NRLW is obviously kicking a lot of goals and doing wonderful things for the code. The officiating side of things is also a huge part of the game. So well done to them. The standards are pretty low right now. So if they're remotely decent, they'll be doing a good job.
Yeah. It's, I mean, we're all for referees, no matter what the gender, to be, well, we expect them to be working in an environment where they're supported. And by supported, what we mean is that they're given all the tools to be successful. And some of those tools involve sideline officials that work with them. Some of those tools involve the bunker in being able to come up with correct decisions where they are looking at the same incident over and over again. And I think a lot of it has to do with the rule making and the leadership around referees, and what sort of expectations are on them in their job. Because whilst we're critical of referees, I think there's been many a time where the season and the rule changes or interpretations that they're told to officiate to leave them set up for mistakes, errors, and a bit of failure. So let's hope that both Casey and Belinda are given the adequate support from their other officials and from the NRL hierarchy in this game. Okay. That brings us to the end of no, there is one other thing that I want to talk about without notice, fellas. The comments by Rod Churchill against Latrell Mitchell. Now, the aspect I want to just interested in your opinion on is people seem to be brushing over how a private text message has got there into the hands of the media. How has that happened? Anything that any of your thoughts on this, John?
Yeah, well, it means one of the two parties have leaked it, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, there's nothing to be gained by you would think Rod Churchill in leaking it.
I think that's probably fair to say. So yeah,
I'm not suggesting. I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm just saying if he did,
you didn't have anything to gain by it. Yeah.
No, and then it makes you. You'd think, why on earth would you do that?
Coda NASA's out there now saying that racism is going to drive Latrell out of the game the way it did Sonny Bill and whatnot. Yeah, look, there are two conversations here. One where Latrell is the victim of racial abuse in the NRL, which is a very important issue to deal with, and the other,
and that comes from foolish keyboard warriors and idiots at game that want to yell out, and they have no place. They have no place in the game of rugby league. Anyone that behaves in that manner, like it just, it has no place in the game, and the game is constantly This is where we will stand by the game itself and the people associated with the game, is that everything is designed towards education around racism and eliminating it.
And in that regard, Latrell should not have to deal with that sort of stuff. There is anyone that says something to the contrary. Well, I don't really want to be associated with you. I think that is non-negotiable. But the other side of it too is that there is a fair criticism of Latrell as a footballer, purely on a meritocratic approach to how he's conducted himself for South Sydney, on the field, off the field, and whatnot. And I think that's where this conversation is definitely being steered towards. And given what we saw in the week that was with Sam Burgess, John Morris having differing views and opinions from their head coach as to how different parts of the South team are managed. I think that there absolutely needs to be. I don't know if there's going to be that realization moment for Latrell, but yeah, I feel like he is not playing at his full potential, and that's a good thing for Parramatta. It's a bad thing for the game.
Yeah, and look, just on those comments that I've read the published text, and I think I'm not sure whether it was in the public interest for the Herald to print the contents of the text, because prior to that, it was a private conversation in which there was probably a couple of comments which crossed the line into being personal, but they're not damaging if they're not out there in the public arena.
Mm-hmm.
And the person in receipt of this, which was Nick Pappas, I believe, he has had the opportunity to, reply to that text. I don't know what the personal relationship between Rod Churchill and Nick Pappas is, whether they are extremely good friends, and one feels that they feel they can talk to each other without a filter on. I don't know, but I mean, the comments cross into being hurtful and personal when they're put into the public arena, right? And that's the same with keyboard warriors, right? Because keyboard warriors, if they kept their traps shut, or were just talking to people of their like mind, well, you know what? We're not having to deal with them as much. But as soon as they hop online and they use a public platform to spread, filthy ideas, disgraceful ideas to the world at large, or towards a victim of it, that's where it becomes disgusting, like really disgusting. And it shouldn't be given a platform, right? And there's a lot of comments, a lot of opinions out there that social media platforms need to be more responsible in what they allow. Now, I'll put this to you. This wouldn't be the story that it is, and people wouldn't be getting upset if it wasn't put out there in the public arena, and that it was simply dealt with personally and privately between Nick Pappas and also Rod Churchill, and I believe Rod Churchill, and it was acknowledged by the Herald, asked that his comments not be made public, but they made the decision to make them public. And we can't really comment more because we don't know enough to comment more. But that's my area of concern: is who leaked a private text message, and why it was seen as essential that a private text message be shared in mainstream media with the world. Because I don't think it helps the situation at all. I think it only inflames it. And we're not talking about keeping abuse quiet or anything like that, because the person has that opportunity to be reprimanded or pulled into line privately, and that in itself is still speaking up. Because if you shut someone down right at the source, you're speaking up. And I think, as I said, I don't think there's too much more we can say on that. But anything you want to add, fellas?
No, I am perfectly fine with that statement as a sign off for that particular topic.
Yeah, likewise. Very well said.
Okay, so we move on, and again, we make that offer to people. We're now at part 3 of our podcast. So again, if anyone wants to pop out for an intermission, grab a drink, something to eat, go to the loo, whatever you want to do. We're going to be giving our preview of the Eels, Jersey Flegg and NRLW matches. So we assume people are now back in. They're settled in. They're ready to listen. Fellas, the Jersey Flegg match between the Parramatta Eels and the Penrith Panthers taking place at 11 a.m. North Sydney Oval. John, can you, again, just quickly run through the Parramatta Eels team from fullback to the bench?
Yeah, and quickly before we do that, a reminder that you can catch this one not only on TCT, where we have live updates, but New South Wales Rugby League TV via their Facebook stream, so make sure to tune in for that. But yeah, the Eels line up as such: Te Horanui Apanui Tweedle or Upper Tweedle at fullback, Matty Komalafi, Ethan Martin, the electrifying Ethan Martin on the wings, Sammy Loizu and Richard Penasini in the centres, Joshua Lynn and Ethan Sanders are in the halves, Brock Parker, Jonte Junior Betham Mees are the bookends, Matty Arthur the dummy half, Jock Brazel returns to captain the team from the left edge, Max Tupou will be on the right, Nick Lenars, he of the Player of the Year honours in the Jersey Flegg, will be the lock forward, and I dare say emergency dummy half. On the interchange, Blaze Talangi, Sam Tuivasa, Will Latu and Noah Reid. Charlie Geimer is the 18th man. It's a very deep squad. It's a very good squad. They're taking on the Penrith Panthers, who they met literally to book their spot into the finals, or one part of the equation to book their spot into the finals. So both teams will have a pretty good feel for each other after what we saw out of Bluebet on the weekend. And yeah, the Eels shouldn't be short on confidence. Like I said, I think they've won 7 of their last 8. They've beaten premiership contenders like the Roosters and the Panthers in that run. They are red hot. They are scorching coming into the finals. So if they play anywhere near their potential, I think they can make a very deep run, boys.
Okay, Clint, who's going to be key for the Eels in this?
Look, it's hard to single anyone out given the run of form they had, because everyone's played a contributing part in what's been very strong team performances over the better part of the last 2 months. But it's always hard to go past the halves, and obviously Ethan Sanders has a fantastic kicking game that not too dissimilar to Mitchell Moses in the effect it has on the team, in that it helps them control field position. Likewise, we've got a handful of boys who have played plenty of cup football over the past 2 months as well, that should be coming back to that grade with plenty of confidence. Josh Lynn more recently had a very good game, a winning game against the Roosters in the New South Wales Cup. And likewise, big Junior Jonte coming back down as well should have plenty of fire in his belly to take it to the Penrith Medal. So Matt Arthur as well. Look, it kind of feels like I'm just going through the team list and naming the positive attributes, but such is the form of this side, and to John's point, the ability that within the squad and the depths within the squad, you can't help but think that there is a good opportunity to make a deep run into this final series.
Yeah, look, they've been winning the middle. They've been winning the edges. There's been space created for their outside backs to get the job done. As you said, you could literally name everyone across the field. I think the spine is obviously critical, and the middle forwards. That's always the case in rugby league matches. I think that Bud's Arthur has certainly been critical in getting those forwards moving. His workload is freakish. I think he made something like about 43 tackles last week against the Panthers.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, Sixties, because I think that was, on the flip side, I think it was probably one of Bud's more pedestrian attacking efforts, which means that the Eels still have another gear to go in that regard coming into this game. If Bud's gets back to his best in attack, then they've got another difference maker.
Well, I think the first half was characterised by the entire team looking and playing nervously last week. And halftime was the best thing that could happen, because they clicked into that gear in the second half. I mean, the first half was all about them presenting opportunities to the Panthers, and really for a large part of that first half hanging on, like not letting that game get away from them. And as soon as they were only 2 points down at halftime, I was really confident that they were going to go on with the job in the second half. And the best thing that happened was the halftime break, where they could settle down. Breno could get to talk to them, get them refocused on what they needed to do, and go out there and execute. And that's basically what we saw in the second half. You've got blokes out there that can finish the tries. Ethan Martin he's a revelation this year. He is one to keep an eye on, and I'll be highly disappointed if the Eels can't look at the potential that's there with him, because he's coming there with really predominantly a union background, and he's learning the game, and he's making an impact from out on the wing. And there's not a lot of him, but he's an absolute terror to be able to tackle.
He's one of those players that every time the ball's in his vicinity, you start sort of edging forwards on your seat till you get to the very tip of it, and just like expecting something to happen.
The number of times that he went from a nothing situation, almost breaking through into the clear. It was like people were just getting a hold of him. And it makes me think that an off-season with a bit of gym work and a bit of extra strength, that because we know that he's got the pace, he runs with extreme purpose and authority. He doesn't hold anything back. Like it's almost like no, they're not kamikaze runs, because he's actually smart with it. He hits, he steps, and he does everything at full throttle when he's taking the ball into the line. And he certainly scored a couple of tries that I think only he would have scored on the weekend. The one where that his pace, when he was given that a bit of a passageway to the corner in the first half, and then in the second half, I think he beat 2 or 3 defenders in that run to score in the corner in a crucial try. Look, but again, I could be mentioning a whole lot of them. I mean, we talked about Nick Lenars getting the Player of the Year. He's just been, a phenomenal workhorse for the team this year. It's no surprise to see him get that award. And the work of Brock Parker in the middle. I mean, he's apart from the period of injury where he's also been up there as being one of the most consistent players for Coach Craig Brennan, and I think it's of no coincidence that those players have held their place when a lot of the SG Ball players were introduced into the team. And again, I think Craig Brennan's done a great job in blending the two squads together into a team that really celebrates each other's success. And that, I think that's a big part to this surge that they've had late season, is that they enjoy playing together and enjoy celebrating each other's success. So, so many key players. I think the fact that we have a halfback and a 5'8" who offer options on both, like real options on both sides of the ruck, is critical, because Josh Lynn has continued to improve throughout the season, and we all know just how good Ethan Sanders is. But when the defensive systems and the tip sheet can't just concentrate on Ethan Sanders now, because Josh Lynn, effectively, if he's positioned on the other side of the ruck and they're not combining on the same side, he can be a problem for the defence as well. So, okay, time for the tips. John, what are you tipping here? Let's go for our usual. The score, the first try scorer, your best on field, and then Clint the same.
Ooh, well, I'm going to tip the Eels to win, obviously, and to win, honestly, pretty well. I think, anything can go in a game of football, but the Eels had the measure of the Panthers on the weekend and beat them earlier in the season as well. So backing them to pick up the win again in the finals. So I will go for maybe a 30-16 win. First try scorer, well, you take your pick. There are a whole bunch of candidates. I'll go with Richard Penasini coming back from the concussion, though. Get him over the line first. Best on field, again, take your pick. Bud Arthur is going to be in the thick of it. Brock Parker, I thought, was outstanding last week and will be a real big factor if the Eels are to dominate the middle. Yeah, I will go. You know what? I'll go Richard Penasini first try scorer. I'll go Ethan Martin best on field to pick up a double or a hattie.
Oh, interesting. Clint, same for you now.
I was having a little bit, you may have heard a little bit of a laugh under my breath as John was sharing his thoughts there, because mine are not too dissimilar. I have a 28-16 win, with Bud Arthur being man of the match, best on ground. And first try scorer, I'm going to go the other winger. I think you said Richard Penasini, who's playing centre, and Ethan Martin to get a double. I'm going to go Matt Kamalafe.
Okay. And I'm going to say that it's going to be a 32-18 victory to the Eels. Look, I think the Spine will have a terrific match and be easy to go for one of them for best on field. I'm going to go for that, our man Nick Lenaz to be best on field out there. And I'm going to go for Woods Arthur to be first try scorer. A little sneaky dummy half play there to get him across the line as the first try scorer. Okay, John, can you now lead us through the NRLW team list, and we'll take a preview of their game.
Yeah, NRLW on the road this week. They're heading to the Central Coast to take on the Sydney Roosters. 1:50 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. And they look like this. Abby Church at fullback, Zoe Faye and Kimberly Hunt on the flanks, Lindsay Tui and Cassie Toihiku. Has to be the youngest centre pairing in the competition. I can't see anyone have anyone younger than those two. Outstanding talents, both of them. In the halves, Berryman Duff and Pearson combine again, sorry. You got Tuisha O'Neill and Tyler Amiatu in the front row. As the bookends, Ruben Cherrington is the dummy half packing in alongside him. Amelia Murphy, Mahalia Murphy, the M&Ms there in the back row, with Jade Fanua in the lock position, Capri Paikau, Noaria or Boss Kapua, Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis and Maddie Jones round out the interchange. Davis Welsh, Simon Todd Hunter, Donovan and Muru are the extended roster options there. In the box is Todd Smith, with the main whistle is Darian Ferner. And yeah, they're taking on, we mentioned their names before, but an absolutely stacked Roosters lineup.
Yeah, it is a stacked Roosters lineup. The centres, that they speak for themselves. Taryn Aiken, she's been throwing some passes that NRL players, top flight NRL players, would be proud to pass. She is quite the talent there at 5'8". I think the pack speaks for itself, and I've always been a massive fan of Millie Boyle. I think, she's an absolutely superstar middle forward. So the girls are going to be up against it this week. But as we've said, there's plenty of positives, and I sense probably plenty of self-belief in the team. Clint, how far can self-belief carry the Eels in a match?
Self-belief in sport can carry any team as far as they want it to. Like the fact of the matter is, when you're out there on the field and adrenaline takes over, and even if we move away from off the field, there's plenty of anecdotal evidence across the globe of people doing miraculous things when adrenaline takes over. So, it shouldn't be considered mission impossible, but it will be damn difficult for them. But that's no reason to go into the game without confidence, because as our NRL side showed, if you play your own game, and the boys had the benefit of playing without pressure and having one of those rare free shots at a side with nothing really on the line, and the games worked for them. There's no reason that the NRLW side can't adopt the same mantra. I mean, you just got to win your little moments and win the little battles, and let the war take care of itself. We've got a fantastic halfback in Rachael Pearson who can kick for field position and offset some of the damage that those Roosters forwards will cause. And likewise, we've got a couple of weapons of our own that if we use tactically, we can create problems for them ourselves. I always look at games of rugby league as if you've got a halfback and some forwards that can help, at the very least, neutralise, if not swing the field position game in your favour, regardless of the rest of the quality of the side, you're always in with a fighting chance. And I kind of feel that that's the case for the girls this week.
Yeah, 40, a couple of things I want to throw to you before we get our tips. First of all, we still saw the odd error there from the Eels that they really need to eliminate from their game. First of all, how important is it going to be to eliminate those errors? And then secondly, which matchups out there are you most looking forward to watching?
Well, just quickly touching on the confidence thing first, going back to that, you only need to look at the Newcastle Knights to see how important confidence is when it comes to producing at any level but the NRL level. And obviously the 2009 Eels as well. But going back to what you're saying, Sixties, what was your first question? Sorry, I know the matchups for the second one.
Just the Eels have been, some of the basic errors that have cost them games already this year, and they continue to be part of in the team's DNA. Raised their head even last week in the win, but the Eels had that resilience to defend when they made some errors last week. They really can't afford them this week against the Roosters. So,
no, and that was going to be my sort of big point, was minimising those errors, minimising the flipping of field position, of territory, of possession will be a huge component if the Eels are going to be competitive in this game. You cannot hand the Roosters, you cannot hand any team, but especially this Roosters team, freebies when it comes to attacking your goal line. And I know our girls have been very spirited in their goal line defense. What we saw against the Cowboys on the weekend was fantastic on the goal line. They were throwing their bodies into everything save the number of tries. The Roosters will be scoring more often those opportunities if you do the same. The Cowboys are a raw expansion franchise, sorry. The Roosters are a whirring machine right now. They're just loaded up with representative superstars. So do that, and you put yourself at the starting line, I think. After that, it's going to be about how hungry they are. I think they're going to give themselves a very good chance on the weekend. I don't know if they're going to win just because of just how ridiculous that Roosters team is, but the Canberra Raiders got a good team. The Brisbane Broncos got a great team, and the Eels took it to both of them. Yeah, they lost, but they were right in it up to their eyeballs until the final whistle. So I think that they can absolutely be in the fight here on the weekend. But in order to do that, like you said, Sixties, they've got to minimise those errors. And like you said, Quint, they've got to find a way to put their best players in a position to succeed. That means finding a way to get Tai Hiku, to get Abby Church, to get obviously in backline positions to feature, but also putting Amiatu into positions to get downhill and generate second phase play, which then unlocks Ruben Cherrington. You know, there is a cascading sequence of events that can happen the moment you get a player like Amiatu into the game. So getting her firing is huge. That gives Pearson the ability to operate on the front foot. That opens up your entire back line, opens up the run, the pass, and the kick, which we know Pearson can do very well. So that's where I'm looking at. It's the same players we keep talking about. And we're talking about them for a reason. They are your future building stones, but they're also your cornerstone players right now to win. So getting them into the game plan is the big part for me.
Okay, so we're at the pointy end now, fellas. John, first we'll start with you. Your match scoreline, your first try scorer, best on field.
I think the Roosters are probably going to be the winners here, but that wouldn't be a fun thing to tip. So I will go for the Eels to win in a high-scoring wheel and deal and try-scoring a fun, 28-26. So for us blokes where the nails are being bitten isn't a big deal, okay. But for the girls who like their nails, you're going to need some nice fake ones after this game. So Eels 28-26, first try scorer. I'm going to go Cassie Tai Hiku. I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't the try scorer, but the try creator. I know it's a bit cheap to go for the budding superstar, but that's where I'm going. And then best on field, I will go Tyler Amiatu. I think so much of this game starts and ends with how much she can dominate in the middle, and if she can continue to free that arm to offload, because her with that offload just completely changes the game for Cherrington, and completely changes the game for Pearson as well.
Yep, sounds good, mate. Now, Clint, your takes?
Look, I although it's not fun, I do see it being a Roosters victory. It is, as you gentlemen touched on, pretty much a rep level quality side there. And I dare say some of the girls who played in that grand final qualifier and were upset by the Eel squad, that there'd be a little bit of a get square mentality for some of them, and they certainly won't take our girls easy regardless of how the season to date's unfolded. I see a big performance from Millie Boyle coming in, and I've tipped her to be my player of the match. And I expect it to be a contest with maybe the Roosters to break away late in the game and get a 32-16 victory. But it'll be a scoreline that won't tell the tale of the story, and I think it'll be another step forward for our girls regardless. Jess Burgess, I see, as my first try scorer.
Okay, well, I'm like 40. I could easily tip the Roosters, and probably should, but it's not much fun. So, likewise,
Sorry for being the boring one, everyone.
Okay, so 32-30 to the Eels, high scorer. I'm going to go similar to. I'm going to keep a theme with the Jersey Flegg and go for the dummy half to be our first try scorer in Ruben Cherrington, and best on field. I'm going to go Tyler Amiatu as well. So there we go. Now, before we sign off, fellas, just a bit of a rundown of the award winners as they've come through from the Eels for tonight's Ken Thornett Medal. So we've got that Gutho was the Blue and Gold Army NRL award winner. Junior Paulo, the Ray Price NRL Community Award winner. The Jersey Flegg Coaches Award, as we mentioned before, went to Brock Parker. The Steve Ella Jersey Flegg Player of the Year Award to Nick Lenars. The Jeff Gerard New South Wales Cup Coaches Award goes to Kai Rodwell. The New South Wales Cup Bob O'Reilly Player of the Year going to Luca Moretti. The Eric Groth Senior NRL Rookie of the Year Award. This is a bit of a surprise. Wiramu Greg.
I didn't know he was still eligible. That's why I thought Brendan Hands was a shoo-in in that light. I thought Woody played too many games last year, which is why I never had him for consideration.
Yeah, that same year. I was thinking elsewhere. I thought it was likely to be Brendan Hands.
The Dally M, the cutoff is 5 games in the previous 5 or less games in the previous season, right?
Something like that.
I think that's what it used to be. Woody played. He played 19
in his first year.
He played 19 games from 21 onwards. So where is Rugby League Project? There he is. He played 2, 1. Oh, he only played 3 games prior to this year.
Oh, there you go.
I did not have him down for that fewer games. So 1 in 2022, 2 in 2021.
Okay, so the Jack Gibson NRL Coaches Award goes to Will Penasini. The Nathan Hindmarsh NRL Players Player Award goes to Gutho. And
imagine picking that hobbling, useless lump at fullback as your players player. Come on.
And of course, fellas, we've just got word through on the winner of the Ken Thornett Medal. It probably doesn't come as any surprise that the winner is Clint Gutherson. It's been a big season for the King. Shout out, of course, as well to Jermaine Hopgood, who was very, very close, apparently, in the medal count. But yes, the King takes out the Ken Thornett Medal for 2023, which I believe is his second Ken Thornett Medal during his time at the Eels.
Very well deserved.
Okay, fellas, so that brings us to the end of certainly an extended podcast, putting it all into one podcast again. Our thank you to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf, Northmead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in to this. And please remember, if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, give it a like, help us with the metrics that are there, help us to build that up. We're going to build the content on the YouTube channel. We've got some videos we've got to add to that channel that will be coming up during this off-season / pre-season. So stand by for that. And John, Clint, thank you so much for another fine episode that you've provided this evening. And, it'll be this morning for those people that are perhaps listening to this.
Probably the afternoon by the time they're finished.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.